Hello, new Stoics. This is Tim, and this is today's Daily Stoic. So, today we are getting into Seneca's Morals of a Happy Life, which was compiled by George Lestrange, who's an English writer who put together all the different books of Seneca, like of anger, of wrath, and right now we will eventually get into of benefits, and all these are very important books of Stoic ethics. But before we get into that, I would like he puts together a really nice brief history on Seneca's life, and I think it's important to kind of learn about the man a little bit more. He lived a very interesting life as a philosopher and a writer and a politician, and so I think it's worth it to kind of get into that. Called Seneca's Life and Death, and like I said, it was written by George Lestrange. It has been an ancient custom to record the actions and the writings of eminent men with their circumstances, and it is but a right that we owe to the memory of our famous author. Seneca was born by birth a Spaniard of Cordova, a Roman colony of great fame and antiquity. He was of the family Annius of the Order of Knights, and the father, Lucius Annius Seneca, was distinguished from the son by the name of the order. His mother's name was Helvia, a woman of excellent qualities. His father came to Rome in the time of Augustus, and his wife and children soon followed him, our Seneca yet being in his infamy. There were 3 brothers of them, and never sister: Marcus Annius Novadus, Lucius Annius Seneca, and Lucius Annius Mela. The first of these changed his name to Junius Gallio, who adopted him. To him it was that he dedicated his treatise of anger, whom he calls Novadus too, and he has dedicated his discourse of a happy life to his brother Gallio. The youngest brother, Annius Mela, was Lucian's father. Seneca was about 20 years old of age in the 5th year of Tiberius, when the Jews were expelled from Rome. His father trained him up to rhetoric, but his genius led him rather to philosophy. He applied his wit to morality and virtue. He was a great hearer of the celebrated men of those times, as Attalus, Socian, Ferrerus, Fabinus, of whom he makes often mention, and he was much an admirer of Demetrius the Cynic, whose conversation he had afterwards in the court, and both at home also and abroad, for they often traveled together. His father was not at all pleased with his humor of philosophy, but forced upon the law, and for a while he practiced pleading, after which he would needs put upon public employment, and he came first to be a quaestor, then praetor, and some will have it that he was chosen consul, but this was doubtful. Seneca, finding that he had ill offices done him at court, and that Nero's favor began to cool, he went directly and resolutely to Nero, with an offer to refund all that he had gotten, which Nero would not receive, but, however, from the time he changed his course of life, received few visits, shunned company, went little abroad, still pretending to be kept at home, either by indisposition or by his study. Being Nero's tutor and governor, all things were well so long as Nero followed his counsel. His 2 chief favorites were Burrus and Seneca, who were both of them excellent in their ways. Burrus in his care of military affairs and severity of discipline, Seneca for his precepts and good advice in the matter of eloquence and the gentleness of an honest mind, assisting one another in that slippery age of the prince, says Tatius, to invite him, by the allowance of lawful pleasures to the love of virtue. Seneca had 2 wives. The name of first is not mentioned. His second was Paulina, whom he often speaks of with great passion. By the former, he had his son Marcus. So that's where we're gonna start today. We'll kind of finish it up. I think either tomorrow or the next day. We'll get it done this week. For the way George Lestrange writes is definitely in a very flowery, hard to understand language. And of course, the Latin names obviously are giving me a little bit of trouble, but we'll kind of power through it because it's very important that we kind of understand the man a little bit, because he lives a very similar life, I would say, as Marcus Aurelius, except for instead of ascending to be a emperor and following any particular philosopher in general, like Aurelius really liked Epictetus. Seneca was a very well-educated man, followed after very many philosophers, and was obviously a big fan of the Cynics and the Stoics, of which he became one of the biggest philosophers of Stoicism. I should note that there's a lot of special cases that we're going to make with Seneca, because he does not follow Stoicism to the law. He kind of tries to bend it to apply to his life a little bit, because he's put in very precarious situations with his life as a politician and as a life of a very wealthy man. There was a lot of good and bad rumors about his life throughout his life, and unfortunately some of these are lost to history, so we don't really know if he was an adulterer like was claimed, or that he was a loan shark to the ancient Britons. We don't really know, because all we know is from his writings and from Tatius and other ancient historians, because people that knew him apparently thought very highly of him, but there is also word of another side of him. So we have to kind of take that to heart the more we talk about Seneca. So that's part one of the history of Seneca. I think hopefully tomorrow we'll do part two. I know it's New Year's, but we'll try and post. So I hope everybody's having a great day, and stay tuned for nightly meditations. And this is Tim out.